So, welcome everybody, and thanks for the introduction, Dave. So, I'm Scott. I'm one of the co-founders of fuzzlab, and I'm talking about chatbots and how they can be of value to social housing. At fuzzlab, we do one thing only, and that's build virtual agents and chatbots for social housing. That's what we do. Before I get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about my background. So, like Dave, I was born many years ago, not quite as many as Dave, but I lived on a council estate, same as Dave, and my mum is still there. So I want to tell you about my mum. My mum is 73. She lives on her own, and she's a little bit hard of hearing now. And like all mums, she is batshit crazy, but absolutely adorable, and I love her to bits. And my mum needed a repair done in her house, and because my mum's hard of hearing, she struggles with the telephone. She doesn't like to phone the contact centre. She gets a little bit embarrassed, a little bit confused, and I therefore encouraged her to go onto their portal and book the repair through the portal. Now, my mum does a little bit online, she does a bit of Facebook, she does a little bit of email, and she's okay. So she's not completely digitally excluded. She did ask me recently whether she should try online dating, and I very quickly discouraged that and said, absolutely not, Mum, it's certainly not for you. Let's move on really quickly. So we did, but she went online, she tried to book her repair, and she was faced with this. This is the portal that she was faced with. Now, this is relatively typical of a portal. Loads of options there. She didn't know which one to click on to book a repair. There's report it might have been. It wasn't that. There's planning and building. It wasn't that. She clicked around. She went on to housing. Another 16 options that she was given there. And there's more options under here. She could not find how to do the repair. Right. So ultimately, she did phone up, and she phoned up. She was left on hold for a while. She got the repair done, but it was a thoroughly miserable experience for her. Now the problem is that my mum is not unique here. There are many people that have a similar problem. In fact, there's thousands, tens of thousands of people across the UK who have a similar problem. Either they don't want to use the phone because they're hard of hearing, they might have autism spectrum disorder, or they just can't get to the phone during the day when the contact centre is open. Now, when we talk about chatbots and digital technology, we immediately think of the millennials, the younger generation who want to use the new tech. But I think the first point I really want to make today is that it's not just for those people where the new technology can add value. It can really help other people too, and we should remember that. That said, the target market, the majority of people who are going to want to use a chatbot are certainly slightly younger than my mum, let's say. And this is backed up by some research, which I'll come on to. But ultimately, the problem is that call centres of housing associations and local authorities cannot meet the demand of tenant inquiries. One of our customers, just before we went live in January this year, they took 16,000 calls into the contact centre. However, there were 8,000 calls that they just weren't able to handle. So there are 8,000 unhappy customers, and this is just in 1 month. And this is a real problem. Secondly, tenants, including people like my mum, vulnerable people as well, are routinely left on hold, can't get through to the landlord's call centre. Again, unhappy tenants. And thirdly, some tenants aren't able to call during the day, and many simply prefer to use digital channels. That's what they want. And research shows that they want to be able to do that and have self-service capability across those channels to do things like book repairs, manage rent, and request various services. I think it's fair to say that there are certain things that self-service is not suited for some complex stuff. The analogy I use is that when I go to the supermarket, I have a choice. I can go to the self-service checkout, or I can go to the normal checkout. Now, I've come to learn that if I've got a load of stuff in my basket, typically a bottle of wine or a bottle of vodka, it makes sense for me to go to the normal checkout and have somebody do that for me, because it will ultimately be quicker and easier. But if I know that I've got a few things, got simple tasks to do, a few things in my basket, I can go to the self-service, and that works. And over time, I've learned that, and I know which is the best option for me. It's exactly the same thing when we're talking about technology, digital self-service. Over time, the population, people are learning what's best, and what we need to do is give people that option. Now, there was some research done by Housemark, and that showed what the top 3 challenges are. The top 3 challenges that social landlords expect their contact centres to face. And these are the top 3. So channel shift, and fortunately, chatbots can meet that requirement. They do that. Encourage self-service, as we just spoke about. Chatbots can do that. And maintaining high quality service delivery with budget restrictions. We all have budget restrictions, and chatbot can do that. And I've got a slide that shows you the kind of return on investment that we can get from that. Now, I think it's safe to say, now I've worked in this sector now for 7 years. In fact, my very first project that I did as an IT consultant way back in 96 was implementing a housing management system for the MOD. Worked in different sectors, and since then, and I can say hand on heart that there's no other sector that takes customer care as seriously and puts customers at the heart of everything we do as seriously as social housing. I think you could argue a case for healthcare, but I think the people in healthcare, some of them going for the science, not so much for the people. The people in our sector, people who work in our sector, genuinely care about the tenants, and that's what makes it really nice to work in. That's why I like it. If we had all the money in the world, if we could have contact centres that were open 24/7, if all of the staff were super well trained, if everybody could get through straight away, that'd be great. Even that, however, doesn't meet some of these problems that we're facing, where people do want to use different channels, but people do want to self-serve. So yeah, let me just move on from that, but you get the idea. I want to talk a little bit now about our products and chatbots in general. And we call our products a virtual agent. We prefer to use the term virtual agent rather than chatbot, and I'll tell you why in a second. But there are 3 key elements to our solution. And these should be considerations for chatbots in general. So hopefully these next few slides, I think, if you're considering putting a chatbot in, which I hope many of you are, and you're looking to do it with either a current supplier or a generic chatbot provider, make some notes, because I think these next few slides will be of use to you, and hopefully you'll get some value out of it as a takeaway. What we need is a simple user interface, a simple design. We've got some design principles that make that a reality. We'll go into that in a sec. We call that the UI. You need to train the artificial intelligence, train your chatbot to handle the thousands of inquiries that you're going to get. Often, when I first engage with a customer, they talk about their top 10 or top 20 or their frequently asked questions, because they want to train those in. I can tell you hand on heart, when I look through the production data of all the calls that we get through, there are thousands of different inquiries that the virtual agent or the chatbot is going to need to handle. Okay, and that's done in the AI and the artificial intelligence. Thirdly, we want to be able to have automated business processes. We want to get a tenant from perhaps first contact through to operative on site in a automated process. To do that, we need to integrate with the back-end systems. We call that the SI. So, tells you something about my career, that this slide with the UI, the AI, and the SI is probably one of the things that I am most proud of creating over my career. But let's just go into the UI for a second, right? So the UI, we want to have a simple and accessible interface design. So earlier today, we heard some stuff about, talked about digital inclusion and digital exclusion. I mentioned it with my mum as well. In order to limit the exclusion, we need to have a simple design. The chatbot will sit on a web page. It can sit on your home page. It can sit on a portal. It can sit on the Contact Us page, wherever you want it. But wherever it sits, when it launches, you want it to be easy to use. So we've got some design principles. Again, make a note of this. We try to limit the number of words and characters that the chatbot is going to give as a response. If you put too much in there, customers just aren't going to read the response, or they're not going to be able to consume it. This is really important because the chatbot can also operate over voice-enabled devices such as Alexa or Google Home. It's relatively simple to do, because what we need Alexa to do is take the string that somebody has said, convert that into some words in text, pump that into the chatbot in the same way that you would if somebody typed it. The chatbot handles it and sends it back to Alexa. So the technology is there. What's interesting though, and we did a lot of work with L&Q to do proof of concept around this, and let me give you an example. Works better with an example, right? So say somebody's on the web and they type in, "I can smell gas, what should I do?" Your chatbot should respond with, you need to open the windows, you need to get out of the house, and you need to call 0800 111 999. Now, I can remember that. I've rehearsed it, I've practiced that, we've trained the chatbot to say that. However, if Alexa gives that to a tenant who's a little bit stressed, doesn't know what to do, a little bit flustered, it's difficult for that person to remember 3 instructions in order and also remember that 0800 number. And so the point is, there's no point just giving, translating all of your FAQs or whatever's in the chatbot into Alexa, because that information is not consumable. So don't have an accessible interface. So you need to think around that. So we've designed it so that we can either text the details also to the customer, give them some time to go and get a pen to write the instructions down, or make the instructions really simple when you're talking about a voice interface over a graphical interface so that it's consumable. Finally, we can make the chatbot available over different digital channels, either Facebook or WhatsApp, also SMS. Not everybody, not all of our tenants have got a load of data, big data plan, not all have got smartphones. So you might want to consider using SMS as well as the other digital channels, which often gets overlooked. But chatbots enable you to do that. Interestingly, nobody's really taken us up on that, but it is possible. A simple user interface, an example of a simple user interface design is Google, right? So you can ask Google pretty much anything and you'll get an intelligent response. It's a single line interface, very similar to what we want in the product. So the way I try to explain our product and chatbots in general, if they're designed well, would be, it's like that concierge in a hotel. You can go to this one person, ask them anything, they'll be able to give you a response, whether it's booking a restaurant or theatre tickets or getting a taxi or getting a repair done. It's that single point of contact that everybody knows is there. A well-designed chatbot can sit on your web page and be able to point people into the right direction by, if you ask it anything, so that situation that my mum had when there was loads of confusing information doesn't occur again. Kind of works for Google, they're doing okay out of it, so I figured that that's not a bad way to go. So let's come on to, that was the UI, let's come on to the AI, the artificial intelligence. What we've got in the product, in our product, is the ability to also get business processes completed. So, for example, somebody comes on, and these are real examples that I'm giving you that we had in only well, we have it all the time, but I pulled some data out last week. A number of people say, oh, I walked past a new building site on the road and I'd like to inquire about applying for a house. So it's a very typical question that we see in the chatbot, something like that. So rather than pointing them to a web page to say, okay, or sending them a form, we've designed the product to be able to go through a series of questions to be able to apply for a house. And what we found is that's really nice, because some of our customers, some of the tenants, you present them with a big form, a big ass form, and it can be really confusing. It can be quite daunting, and it's much easier for them if you're presenting them with a single question at a time in a real conversational way, so that they can complete the stuff that they need to complete, whether that's housing register or complaining about their neighbours, because the other thing is they want to do this perhaps at 11 o'clock at night. They want to make a complaint. It's frustrating them. People are noisy. Give them that opportunity to do it digitally, online, there and then. You've got a happy tenant, happier tenant. Pet requests, A's and apps, all of that we can build into the product and enable customers to self-serve with these things, take the hit off the contact center. Finally is the SI, the systems integration. So for us to get that fully automated end-to-end business process complete, we need to hook into the back end, into the housing management system. Our product is agnostic with the HMS, so we can integrate with pretty much anything, as long as there's the ability on their side to do that. And that means that you can go from first contact to operative on site without any human intervention. If we're raising ASB, we can stick that into the CRM so that the HO comes in the morning and he knows what he's got to do. He can do callbacks. We can integrate with live chat. The chatbot won't and can't handle everything. And there will be times when the tenant is going to be wanting to speak to somebody, so we can transfer them over to live chat. If the live chat is there, if it's 9 till 5, if not, we can do a callback request, and then somebody in the contact center can email them or phone them in the morning. To have that fully rounded end-to-end system where a chatbot can really be a virtual agent, you will need to figure out these integrations. This is a bit of an ugly slide, so I won't dwell on it too much, but some research, again from Housemark, showed that on average, a call taken into the contact center is about £3. Can be up to £4 depending on your efficiency. There's about, on average, 10 calls per property per year. Compare that with our chatbot solution, which I've just used as an example. All of that integration, all done, all of those business processes built in for £1.50 per property per year. And you add all of that up. Assume that the chatbot can take 20% of the calls. It can probably take more, but for the example, with that, you can get a return on investment of about 300%. Right? So this goes back to that point earlier. So we can help you save money as well as give good customer service. How do you do it? Right. So this is another point where you might want to make some notes. You need to design your language. So how do you do that? Right. Looks complicated. It is a bit complicated. I'm going to break this down for you one step at a time. So we've got subject areas, we've got 4 entities. Subject areas, we've got intents, which I'll explain, we've got utterances, and we've got responses. How does it work? So I'm giving you a bit of detail into the back end here. So let's take a subject area. We've broken it down into different areas and can report therefore on what it is that customers are asking. Are they asking about benefits, or is it a repair, is it ASB, etc.? The language that people use when talking about these different things is slightly different, and so you need to design it that way. Okay. Let's talk about intent. So the intent is the question that somebody wants to get an answer for. So let's talk about benefits as an example. Some intents within the benefits subject area might be: can I apply for a discretionary housing payment? What's a disabled facility grant? What's the Ben's cap? when does universal credit get paid? Will it cover my rent? And is UC changing because of COVID-19? So different questions that customers ask, and these are real questions that we've had over time that people will ask around benefits. I'm going to jump now to response. Let's ignore the utterance, but let's talk about responses. So we've got benefits. We've got what is a disabled facilities grant. That's the intent. You have to build in your response as well. So within our products, we've got all the responses there. If you want to change them, you can absolutely change them. It doesn't take much effort for us at all. We're talking like minutes. You can do that. And if somebody therefore asks for disabled facilities grant, or what is it, they get that response. However, let's talk about utterances, because somebody can ask that same question in infinite different ways, and believe me, they do. And so what we need to do is train the artificial intelligence to be able to deal with all of those different variations. So what we've done is trained it with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different ways that people can ask similar questions. So examples are, do I need a DFG to get an adaptation? Who pays for a wheelchair ramp? What's a DFG? We need to train it for some tech speak. People use it all the time. Can my mum get financial help to put in a lift? So that question could equally be, can my dad get some financial help? Can my auntie, or can I? So we've had to train the chatbot to be able to recognize all of these different ways of asking similar questions, but all different people within a family entity as well. You see this as well. We get it. Can my boyfriend move in? Is he allowed to under my tenancy agreement? Or I've just got married. Can my wife move in with me? Is my dad allowed to stay with me for a couple of days? Different ways. So you have to train the chatbot to know not only the question, but the type of entities within that question. Mum, dad, aunt, uncle. You get the idea, right? So different ways to ask the same question to get the same response. So when people ask me, Scott, how many questions have you got built into the chatbot? There are tens of thousands. The real question is how many responses or how many intents are there built in, because there's not this one-to-one relationship between a question that somebody could ask and what the right response is. To have a chatbot that isn't just going to frustrate your customers because every time they ask a question, they get, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to deal with that, takes time and a lot of thinking around each subject area. So the benefit of our virtual agent is that the hard work's been done for you. We've done all of that thinking. We've got all of the questions built in. We've got all of the business processes built in. And we know how to integrate with the back-end system as well. If you're considering a chatbot and you're going to your portal provider to do that, or a generic chatbot provider, these are the things that you need to get them to do, get them to think about. What I'm hoping is you can see from the stuff that we've done over the last few years is that all of that for us comes out of the box for you. You get it. We can get you live with all of those questions built in within a matter of weeks, literally. The integration and customizing those business processes does take a little bit longer, but we've staged our implementation so that you can get the benefit out of all of that work that we've done really quickly, really easily, and then we can layer on some of that other stuff, that more value-adding stuff as well over time. The benefits of a virtual agent in general, or a chatbot in general, are, just to summarize then, your customers can self-serve, they can do it online, and they can get immediate resolution for their problem. You can offer, as a landlord, you can offer 24/7 support, and you can do that across multiple digital channels, and you can do that relatively easily with a chatbot. So those of us in the room who are, or in our collective rooms, who are considering digital transformation projects at the moment, many are, chatbots are a real easy way to enable that self-service over digital channels, which it seems to me that most people immediately jump to a portal or a phone app to do that. Now, we don't have a phone app. We chose not to do that. Our chatbot is available over SMS and WhatsApp. the apps that most people are familiar with and want to use, and they don't want another app. I certainly don't want another app on my phone. I've got one too many already. So if you're considering digital transformation, just have a think about chatbots. Come talk to me afterwards, and I can talk to you about how we do that. Most importantly, landlords can reduce call volumes and reduce wait times for the customers that do need to speak, have those complex issues that they want to speak, or they just prefer to talk and not use the digital channels, and there are many. Importantly, landlords can reduce the staff training costs. You can reduce your costs in general, and also gain business continuity. I know the people I've been speaking to, because of the COVID crisis and the house arrest that we were all under, wanting to be able to have that continuity, have that capability for customers to be able to speak, even though the contact centres might not have been fully staffed. Okay, my last slide before we get into the Q&A. What I really want to stress is that the chatbots aren't there to take over from the humans. I'm not saying that chatbots are better for humans. Ones are better than the humans. What I'm saying is by working together, we can have a much more complete solution. We can have different ways to be contacted. We can have 24/7 service. There's always going to be a need for the human agents, people to deal with customer problems. And our feeling is that by allowing the computers and the robots to do that low-hanging fruit, to do that transactional easy stuff, that's going to free up the humans to become more human. And what I mean by that is, that means training can be focused not on how to publish a refund, but training can be on how to build trust with your customers, how to do active listening, so you're really understanding what your tenants need. It means that the contact centre team have got more time to spend with the tenants that really need them, tenants that need them most. So with that ethos of great customer care, with the fact that people in our sector really do care for customers, but we're just limited by budget and technology, our vision is that if every social landlord in the UK had our solution, or a solution like it, then our sector would genuinely lead the world in customer care. We can do this if we apply the technology well, and I really hope that we can do that, and we're not too far away. Okay, so just flash that. That's some of the people that we're working with at the moment. These are my contact details. So come have a chat with me afterwards, please, and take my email address there. Give me a call, and we can talk.
Thank you, Scott. That was good. I must admit, with chatbots, it's something I've been aware of, something I know about the benefits of. But it wasn't until I seen some of those slides I truly realised how they work. So thank you for that. It was a good insight. We have a number of questions, actually, some good questions here. Well, I'm going to run through with you. The first two are related to, I think, housing management systems. So the first one is, how easy is it to integrate a chatbot with other systems like housing management systems, tenant portals if they sit outside the housing system, and so on? So that's going to be a kind of architectural question, Scott.
Yeah. So good question. And there's two parts to that. So let me break it down. So how does it work with the portal? Super simple. And we will provide some instructions to create a chat window that sits on the portal. It's about a day of effort we can do it, but we tend to leave it to your web developers to do that, because they can then brand it and make it the same color as the portal. It's not much effort, and there's a few different ways that can be done, different technologies, whether that's React, or don't want to get into the tech too much, or an iframe, but yeah, that's relatively straightforward. Integrating it with the housing management system, a little bit more challenging. One of my projects back in the day was as an integration manager when we implemented Manhattan Atrium as the HMS for Barnet Local Authority. That was the job. I had like hundreds of different interfaces that we had to do. Every one of them was a pain, every single one of them. And it shouldn't be underestimated how hard it can be. Yeah, that was some time ago. And with APIs available now, it is easier, absolutely. It depends on the age of your housing management system and whether those APIs are available. Typically now we find most are, right? So it's relatively straightforward. It does need testing. We've signed up to the HACT Housing Association Charitable Trust data standard. And so what HACT are doing, they're doing a great job. If you're not familiar with what HACT are doing here, it's well worth checking out. But HACT have developed some data standards for things like booking a repair. They're working on a complaint at the moment, so that tool vendors and housing landlords can all agree on what is a repair, right? So what are the fields that are needed? So that has certainly made things easier as well. So an example of that would be if let me see, if everybody had a different plug socket. We've all got plug sockets. We all know that we've got 3 pins, and they're going to the wall because there's a standard for that. But as soon as you go to a different country, the plugs are slightly different standard. It makes it much harder to integrate. So that's why we've signed up to the HACT data standard. And the other tool vendors are doing that as well, which is great news. So.
Scott, there's a question that kind of follows up from that. Is there? I mean, you go out there and talk chatbots, and you talk to landlords. Is there a call from the landlords to integrate the chatbots into the housing systems? Is that what people are asking for?
Yeah. So what we see is an example of why that is being asked for. It doesn't always happen at first. So people don't necessarily consider it at first. And they assume that the chatbot doesn't need to do that. But what we found is an example might be customer says that I've got a leak. I've got a leak in my house. Now that leak could be one of many things, right? So how do you train a chatbot to handle water leaking through the ceiling versus a leaking pipe or a leaking toilet or a leak under the kitchen sink or a leak in the bathroom? And these are all things that people will ask, right? And so to try to get a single chatbot, so each of those will be a single intent, and each intent has to have multiple utterances like I showed. So it's quite easy for a chatbot to get the wrong end of the stick if somebody just says, I've got a leak. Yeah. So the chatbot needs to be able to ask some qualifying questions and be able to drill down into that detail. So then to enable that, you don't necessarily need that integration, but you do need some logic and some artificial intelligence built in. Now, once you've done that and you've understood what the problem is, then doing that final step to integrate is relatively straightforward, but you get a lot of value from it. You get a lot of value because you get this automation.
Yeah, that's good, Scott. And one of another question that relates to that, I'm trying to organise these in a manner that makes sense. So I suppose one of the advantages of it integrating with a system like a housing system is they might be able to take satisfaction that the CRM system, for example, might work in with the data that's received from the chatbots. So have you, Karen Thody again has asked, have you data on the reported customer satisfaction either increase or decrease as a result of implementing a chatbot, your system?
Yeah, so the answer to that, Karen, is we don't have data on general satisfaction, has it increased or decreased. What we have got or are able to provide is the satisfaction that a customer has of dealing specifically with a chatbot, right? So have they got their question answered? You have to interpret it in a couple of ways, because have they had their question answered or not? So we assume if they've had their question answered and then they haven't phoned up as a result or asked for a callback, then yeah, that's a satisfactory answer. We've also built into it that if they get to the end of a workflow, we can ask them specifically, what's your satisfaction rating 1 to 5? And we can provide that back as well.
Okay, some good stuff here.
So can I just add to my previous question, because I kind of forgot to say, and this is around Karen's question about the integration, in that Without it, what we see is some questions will be around how much rent do I owe, or it'll be I can't make a payment because the website's down. I want to make a payment. How do I do that? Not going to be able to give a valid response to those questions. And there are quite a lot of them similar to that without having that integration. So sorry, I forgot to say that.
Oh, that's great. A question from Simon at Grand Union, Simon Penaluna. I like this question here. How are you differentiating your product with MS Auto Attendant and the benefits AA has with integration into other parts of the Power Platform? So a bit in-depth technical there, but still good. Are you developing any integration?
Right. I don't know what MS Auto Attendant is.
Okay. That's fine. Maybe Simon can tell us. I'm not a technical wonder as well, but Simon, trust him to ask a question that we can't answer. But that's what it's all about, because we're now talking solutions. We're now talking. So Simon, ping a message to explain it, and we'll talk about it either now or later. And I'm sure Scott will be able to work through that.
Yeah, I have a Google of that, and
what effect has the lockdown had on interest in your products?
Yeah, it's been big. We've been mental busy. Right. It's been really busy. Yeah, I think immediately there was a panic that first few days, and people were going to be working from home, and I did have a flood of calls. It died down a little bit. That the panic died down, but we've gone over the period. We kicked off 5 new projects. So I think it made people realise that they've had it. That it seemed to me they had it on the back burner for a while. They're considering it, and then got crikey. There's got some tension from the higher ups to actually make it happen.
Simon has come back to us and he said it's basically a simple answer. It's the Microsoft equivalent of a chatbot. So he says it's packaged as part of their Power Platform, this whole new package that they do in Office 365. So has integration into Flow, etc. So it's really within the Microsoft architecture there.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's what he's getting at.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess if you've got Dynamics as your HMS, and if it's the thing I think I saw Microsoft do a demo of, which was good. If you've got Dynamics, then I'm guessing the difference would be it's a lot cheaper. Yeah. Ours is a lot cheaper. If you haven't got Dynamics, then that integration probably, and I'm guessing here, Simon. So let me dig into it and we'll have a chat offline. Ours is platform agnostic, so we can plug into any system.
Thanks, Scott. What typically do HAs use the chatbot? This is an anonymous one. And chatbot for initially, is it triage for CRM or repairs, for example? Is there some examples you can give us, Scott?
Yeah. So we typically see it as being used as the starting point is as a general inquiries chatbot to be able to respond to different requests, and they are. And then what we see with that, so we build it in to be able to handle lots of stuff. We do see a lot of housing registration applications. We do see a lot of repairs. During lockdown, we had a lot of questions talking about when are you going to be starting a repair, or I've got a gas safety check, and is it going to happen?
Yeah.
So it is actually really, really broad. The data looks like about 20% of repairs, 25% of housing queries. There's a couple, about 5%, which is ASB. So it's a general breakdown along those lines.
Good. Another question here from Scott Stewart. What about integrations with Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant, or Cortana, for example, for accessibility?
Yeah. That is easy to do. As I say, so we have a integration platform. We've got an integration layer, and all we need to do is be able to translate whatever's been said to the voice, Siri, Google Home, Alexa, Cortana, into text. Right. And then once we've given that text string to the chatbot on the back end, it's the same back end. Okay. It gives a string back, and then that gets translated into voice. Now, the work that we've done in this space did throw up a few issues with dialects and strong accents, and we're as good as the interface is for that. right? So can Alexa or Siri translate what's been said into text accurately?
Okay.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Secondly, there's some words that are typical to housing, which they get confused by, right? So they haven't got a clue what a lift is or a lift shaft, but they know what an elevator is. So we have to do a bit of translation around that, and there's a bit of a mapping exercise, or a block versus a close in Scotland, right? So there's certain things that we need to be aware of, but it's still
okay. Is the biggest challenge for implementing chatbots into social housing the legacy housing systems or the complex back office processes? And that's, you know, my kind of pet hate there. The complex back office processes many HAs have. But where's the challenge?
Yeah, I'd say it's the latter. It's the processes, and it's not necessarily the complexity of them as it is, but there's also a lack of consistency. Mm-hmm. So when a repair gets booked, for example, there isn't a consistent method of knowing whether it's going to be recharged to the client or what priority to give it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that comes down to the agent's personal preference. Yeah. And it's kind of sweet that some people have got their own customers that they're a little bit soft on, so they'll always book a repair as an emergency, and that goes on. And so what the challenge is saying, right, how do we automate this? Yeah. Pet request is a classic example as well. How do you automate that? Because sometimes, you know, the agent on the phone just gets a feel whether or not it's right or not. Yeah. And we have to have really logic that you can apply to a computer to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes the complexity is something that it shouldn't get in the way. Implementing a chatbot, any system, is your opportunity to simplify these processes. And sometimes people don't look at process data flows until somebody says, here, implement this. And then you turn around, or somebody turns around from a supplier and says, we can do this, but you need to sort out that first. And I think it's a great opportunity.
It is, and I think all IT projects are that opportunity as a springboard for.
It is a springboard to the right word, isn't it? To be able to push forward. Just one final question, that's from myself. When you have that conversation with a chief exec or a head of customer services or something, what's the number one doubt that landlords throw back at you? Is it too fancy? Is it too science fiction? What's the type of things people say, just to finish off?
Yes, thanks. That's a great question, and it's funny because there's two different people there with two different challenges, right? So typically the chief execs or the IT directors, they're more focused on the integration and the technical stuff, which is understandable. What happens is, so I'll have a conversation with one of those, and they'll say, yeah, absolutely, we can see the benefits. We want to get the efficiency savings. I say, great. So we've got all of these questions and intents and utterances in the chatbot. Could you just tell us then what you want the chatbot to respond with if somebody says, using our example, can I have a DFG? Mm-hmm. They then say, go and speak to the head of customer services and the SMEs, and they'll tell you the answer. I had that conversation with those guys. Naturally, their fear is more around customer satisfaction. Is the chatbot going to be able to give the correct response so that the customer doesn't then end up complaining and giving it in the neck to the customer service team? So they have slightly different fear. My job is to, and what I'm really proud of as well, is that we've been able to meet that. So when we get that initial resistance from the head of customer services, and it's natural, and I get that, what happens typically is we get into that test phase. So they give us the questions, they give us the answers a bit begrudgingly, a little bit nervousness in there. Then they see it working when we give it to them to user acceptance test, and the feedback is always really good. It's great, and they go, oh yeah, I'm bought in, I get this now, I can see how it's going to work. And that means that the products work, and that we've done our job as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the days of it being science fiction are certainly well gone, Scott. Thank you. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for everyone that's been listening, and thanks again for fuzzlab for sponsoring and taking part. We're moving into the lunch area now, which is not provided. So go and make your own sandwiches. Go and sort out your own coffee. Look after the children. Catch up with the family. but please don't do too long because we're going to network for the next hour. Scott, thank you, everyone. We'll notify you when it's time for the next session, which, let me just check my notes, is Ryan Dempsey for the compliance workbook at 2 o'clock. Enjoy lunch, enjoy the networking, have a chat. Cheers, Scott. Take care.
Thanks, Dave. Take care.